Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the fifth day of our Tech Takeover week, and we are so excited to be with Aisha Addo this evening. She is a phenomenal Black woman. She's a champion for change. Her mission, as she states it, it's to change the world and make the world a better place for women and girls. Her education is in business administration, but she's an entrepreneur. She's a founder of the Power to Girls Foundation and Drive Her. She codes and reads as hobbies. And she is a recipient of several awards, including the Young, Black and Gifted and 100 Women to Watch in Canada. Welcome, 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 Miss Aisha. There was so much more that I could have said, but I didn't say, because I do want to give you a little bit of time to speak to it for yourself. How are you? Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. Thank you. Again, thank you for creating the space to allow for me to actually share. One thing that I would clarify though is that I don't code.
Okay.
I read, but I do not code. So yeah.
You read for
clarify that, just in case someone comes back later and it's like, no.
Yeah, no, not me. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Happy Juneteenth, that I didn't say before.
Yes. Happy Juneteenth.
So my friends started celebrating so big because of everything that's going on in the world. I'm like, this is worthy of celebration. So let us celebrate.
Absolutely.
But that's good. So, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was saying there's no better time than now to actually celebrate, because we do need a celebration. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to start, I guess people are going to come on in their own time. So maybe I'm going to say a little bit of spiel about what CEE does and who CEE is. And then I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about yourself.
Sweet.
So CEE, for those who do not know and maybe listening to the stream, is CEE Center for Young Black Professionals, is a charitable organization that provides services to youth ages 18 to 29. We train and support youth in entering 5 major labor markets. So that is digital technology, trades, kitchen masters of culinary arts, social service sector, and film. So we have our digital tech program coming up. It's actually going to be in July. And so we are having a tech takeover week, just with people who are doing, amazing work, people who are, world changers, game changers, people who are influential and powerful. And we wanted to ensure that, we had a diverse sort of representation of who we brought on. And Miss Aisha Addo was a fan favorite. We actually put out a poll and we asked people, like, who would you like to see us interview for this week? And so, look at her face. She's like,
what do you mean? Know that. Thank you.
Not a problem. You're definitely doing amazing work. And I know I did a little bit of an introduction, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do.
Wow, thank you so much. That was quite an introduction, and it's definitely humbling to know that, folks actually want to hear about the things that I do. So like you mentioned, I'm Aisha Addo. I always say this, that my passion, or the foundation of everything that I do, is focused around women and girls empowerment and creating safe spaces for women and girls. So that my journey kind of started with Power to Girls, where we provide programming for marginalized Black and marginalized girls. And we do that by providing them with mentorship, leadership opportunities, trainings, personal development, trainings and workshops to basically just help them navigate, whatever spaces that they might find themselves in. So that's kind of my very first dip into entrepreneurship, or figuring out that I could actually create something from, scratch. And then throughout that process, I also founded Drive Her, which is a tech-enabled platform. And what that is that it connects female passengers to female drivers. Drive Her, on the other hand, is kind of my it's like the newest aspect of like the work that I do. It's still something
Mm-hmm.
that I'm still navigating and still trying to figure out, in all honesty.
Right.
But yeah, that was what kind of like launched me into the tech space and really got me to think about the tech space and the tech industry as a whole, like from a different perspective. So like really, really excited to be here and to like really like dig deeper into this conversation.
Right. No, I'm definitely excited to have you. I know. So we officially met like 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
5 minutes ago. But women's empowerment is definitely something that is near and dear to my heart. It's why I started the work in the my work in the field. It was my entry point. So your passion and your commitment specifically to empowering young girls and women really, really does speak to me. I understand though, having worked in the field for a while and, working with really powerful individuals, co-workers at CEE Center for Young Black Professionals, that everybody comes with some level of a story. Like if something brings all of us to the field, at CEE we call it our power story. It's something, that may not have necessarily started out the best way, but something happened or we did something or a situation shifted, and at the end of it we ended up on top. And it's a powerful story. It's a way that we tell it in a way that's empowering, that just like inspires other people. So I'm always interested in hearing what is your story and what brought you into this work.
Wow, that's a very good question. And I like the name of like a power story.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, like that. I actually really like that. That's cute. One of the things that I would say for me is really just navigating the Canadian space, or like just navigating space as an immigrant. So I came to Canada at like around 14 years old, and when I came to Canada, it was like the biggest culture shock ever, right? Because
Right.
one, I like, this is not like I'm new here. There wasn't really folks that really understood where I was coming from. And like I share this in like a jovial way today, because it's like there was no Africa wasn't as hot as it is now, right? So being from Africa was not something that was widely celebrated at the time that I
Right.
came to Canada.
Yeah.
So there was kind of like that experience that really kind of like shifted my perspective. However, that wasn't like, I wouldn't even say that to be like the power story or like what led to the start. I'll use the start of Power to Girls, because the start of Power to Girls launched into the start of Drive Her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I actually ended up in foster care when I came to this country, so about a year and a half after. And throughout that process, I remember vividly one thing that, like, my foster mom said to me, and she said, Aisha, there's so many expectations of you, but you're expected to be a teenage mom, you're expected to be a drug addict, you're expected
Right.
to be a high school dropout, like
Right.
all these different stereotypes that had been pinned on me. And I wouldn't, like, in all honesty, I wouldn't know if it's because of, like, being in the system, or if it's because I'm a young Black girl, or like
Or a
it was like
combination of both,
very,
right?
like, you know what I mean, a blanket stereotype. And for me, I remember saying to myself that, like, I will not be your stereotype. And
Mm-hmm.
and as I recall that story, I wish was that I had said that out loud, like proclaimed that.
Mm.
So that experience kind of like led me to thinking, wow, there really isn't a lot of expectations for young girls.
Right.
And more importantly, if a young girl does not have or the support um to help her get to the next stage or to the next level in her life, then it's so easy to allow the words, or like, the impactations of other people to determine, the trajectory of your life. So I would say kind of like was my aha moment that led to the start of Power to Girls. So throughout that, I remember like when I started college, I just started having conversations with young girls at my church. I'm like, hey, like, we're just on Fridays, or it's kind of like it was a monumental time, because they were able to really challenge me and teach me things about myself, and like even about all the different things that I'm doing now. And I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for my girls. And I say that all the time, so they are like, they are part of my power story in the sense that they held me accountable to all the things that I was saying to them. And also ensure that oh, I don't know where she went. Yeah, so this is so funny. Yeah, I'm gonna keep telling you guys about the story until she comes back. But yeah, so really just help me get to the the next stage and to the next level. So yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened, but Dana, please come back. Well, as we wait, in the show, everyone can hear me. Oh, he's back.
So sorry. My internet just did its own thing. I am so sorry. I'm like, wait, what's happening?
It's not good. I'm like,
wow, I'm so sorry. Thank you for holding it down. And I saw that smile, so I'm sure the viewers really appreciated your smile.
Do not apologize, sis. Don't apologize at all. That's one aspect of technology that a lot of times folks don't take into consideration, right? So
that's such a good save. I love it. I love the save. Technology is not always that reliable. I appreciate it.
It's all business. Yeah. So basically that was kind of like the moments that led to the start of Power to Girls.
Okay, so I left off. This is where I got caught off. I got caught off when you were saying, you kind of said to yourself, "I will not be a stereotype." But your only thing is like, man, I wish I had said that. I wish I had actually proclaimed that out loud. Everything else after that, I totally missed. So I apologize.
No worries. So what I was like, some of the stuff that I was saying is that after that moment, I kind of started, I started college, and then I started mobilizing different girls, and I didn't even go to college for social work or anything like that. I was studying accounting. So one of the things that really got me to kind of get into the next step was actually an incident at church where there was a young girl, and this older lady was speaking to her, and the young girl started crying. And I was kind of like, man, this is not right. Because she was just being called out on different things. So I went up to the girl after and I'm like, hey, listen, you're not the person that she says you are, and really just because one thing that a lot of people do not understand and a lot of people don't take into consideration is the power of words. Our words are so powerful on so many fronts that sometimes, we think it's, we think of it as kind of like, oh yeah, it's whatever. We throw words around like it's nothing, but words have such an impact in our soul.
Life and death. Yeah.
So for me, it was always really important to be that person that reinforces my young girls and reminds them of who they actually are. When even sometimes they have been saying to themselves that, they're not worthy or they're not whatever it may be. So I think that was kind of like one of the aha moments. So I went up to the young girl. I'm like, hey, listen, you are not who she says you are. The only person that can define you is you. And that's something that you definitely have to we all have to work on because we're not perfect in any way, shape or form.
Right.
But then, a couple of the girls from the church and myself, we're going to be meeting up on Friday. So, just come after school, I'll get you guys some food. I'll get you bus tickets for you to get back home. And literally that was the start of Power to Girls as we know it today, and out of we started with literally 6 girls, and out of that 6 girls, I'm still in contact. We went from 6 to 10, and I'm still in contact with up to a half of them. And I have seen them graduate elementary school, graduate high school, and for some of them, I've seen them graduate university and college. So that goes to show that it's really vital when you put yourself out there, but then more importantly when you create a space and you create a community that people feel comfortable and safe in.
That's such a powerful story. And it takes so much sometimes, especially when we have our own baggage, to actually step in and be there when somebody else wants us to, or when somebody else needs us to. Because sometimes just like, everybody has their problems. Like, you deal with yours, I have mine, but the strength and the courage, even in the face of an elder, to like step into that conversation and say just what a young woman needed to hear from another young woman, that was so powerful. Thank you for being that champion and that safe space, for creating that safe space for young girls. You talked a little bit about sometimes, we as females, sometimes it's because of what society has said to us. Sometimes it's because of what the people who should know better have said to us. But we tend to, especially when it comes to things like, say, STEM, we shy away from it. We don't see ourselves in those places. We're not taking up as much space as we ought to in that field or in that area. What do you think needs to be done, or how do we change that narrative for young girls, for girls of color, for Black girls? What do we need to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things that I think is very important when we talk about, women in science. So for those that do not know, STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. Then like now there's also I think a lot of times we actually should consider STEAM, which includes art as well, right? So science, technology, art, engineering, art. Wow. Science,
technology, engineering, art,
and math. Yes.
That's awesome.
And I think it's important to think about it from, like, let's say elementary school, right? I did not get the opportunity to actually go to elementary school in Canada, so I wouldn't be able to speak directly to like those experiences. However,
it's okay.
However, like, I get the opportunity to work specifically with girls in elementary school. And when you have conversations around, getting into tech, or you have conversations around technology, one of the things that I've realized is that technology has not been presented in a way that is exciting to young people, right? And especially when we think about young girls.
Right.
Because traditionally speaking, their textbooks and all these different things are showing them people that, for some of them do not look like them.
Absolutely.
Do not have the same experiences as them. So their options to them are limited. And this is not even something that is just, is just related to like Canada or like North America alone. This is an issue that you see spread across. Like, I work in Africa, West Africa, specifically Ghana, and that it's like the same issue runs there as well, where girls do not see themselves represented in different spaces. As a result, they don't feel like they're able to actually go and be anything in that regard, right? So I think it's
representation matters, right?
Absolutely. Like, representation is key. So I think it's really, really important for us to like create spaces or like engage kids at a very early stage. And that's like, our work at Power to Girls, where, we really start like having some of these conversations really early on. Granted, for us, like, our mandate, or like, we've not, like, our work does not include us providing like the actual skills of tech yet, but that's definitely something that we're looking at, because as I got into the tech space, I realized the disparity between not only men and women, but then even people of color. There are not a lot of people of color within the tech space that you can see. Let me rephrase that you can see. And I say that you can see in the sense that, like, the people that are at the forefront are not normally the people of color. So a lot of young people, a lot of Black people do not feel like I can actually get into this space, because guess what? I'm not seeing that, right? However, there's actually a lot of people that navigate the tech space there. And I think when we also look at tech, I'm using tech as an example because that's something I can speak directly to. When we think about tech, we only think about the people that can code. But no, the project manager is in tech. The UX, UI designer is in tech. The sound engineer is in tech. Like, there's so many different variations of the sector that I think once we start engaging young people in the alternatives of technology and how technology in itself can transform their communities, can transform the things that they're doing, then they look at it from a different standpoint, because not only are they a participant of the sector, they're also innovators of the sector. So they're not just people that are consuming the sector, but they are actively participating in it, because they're actually creating stuff. They're solving problems, they're creating solutions to stuff. So that's some of the stuff that I would say that definitely has to change. And I always say this to parents, like, engage your kids in after school programs that provide them with, because the school does not teach them a lot. You know what I mean? Like, the education system is not designed to have innovators. The education system is designed to have workers. So if that's the case, then you have to ensure that in order for you to be an innovator, in order for you to have critical thinking skills, you have to engage in other things outside of that box that you've been placed in. So that's some of the stuff that I'll definitely highlight.
Yeah, I really like, well, a number of things, but one of the things that you said that actually resonates with C is talking about how folks kind of move away from just being consuming or just consuming tech to actually being a part of the innovation. Our first, before we called our program CEE Tech, it was actually consumers to creators, because it that idea of moving young people who are already so engrossed in digital technology anyway, but just more on a consuming side, like getting them to think more about, how do I create some of this stuff? How do I move from just consuming to being part of innovation? Like, what is in this thing that I'm enjoying so much that's missing? What would make it better? And what is my place in that I really like? And the other thing is, I was going to ask, like, how do we get parents, like, what do you say to parents? Like, how do you engage children in, or how do you prime children, or how do you prepare children to see themselves in those spaces early? So I do like the idea around engaging in after school programs. And I know in certain neighborhoods, in certain spaces, we don't have as many of those programs readily available. So I think maybe some of the work needs to go into that. Like, how do we get tech programs and art programs and STEM programs into neighborhoods that are predominantly people of Black and African descent, specifically because those are places where we don't have the opportunities that somebody else, in another space may have. Or if they don't have it, that's fine. They just, pay XYZ amount of money and get access to it. So I think that's definitely a part of the work to be done, for sure.
Absolutely.
And then talk to me about parents who, because I was reading, well, no, this one was from your TED Talk, the one you did in Ghana, and you were like, these are the options. I like you're a doctor, a lawyer. I think the other one's engineer, or you are essentially like a disgrace to the family. How do you get parents out of that traditional way of thinking, and or like the parents who may be listening now? How do you get them out of that traditional way of thinking and being more open to the opportunities that really are out there in the century, in the time that we're living in, and so that they can encourage their daughters, their sons, to not just think about, it's either a doctor, a lawyer, or you're nothing at all, but entrepreneurship and art, and you know what I mean? Like, how do we get them out of that mindset?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things that for me, and like, in preparation for that TED Talk, like I have very supportive parents, like, God bless their hearts, that, like, we have conversations around careers and around, like, sectors and stuff like that. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. And then, like, a week later, I came back to my dad. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be air hostess. So, like, a flight attendant. And then I came back, I'm like, I don't like heights that much. So, you know what, maybe not. And then I went back to my dad. I'm like, okay, I want to be a fashion designer. And then out of all the options that I gave my dad, it was only one, which was a fashion designer, where he's like, no, because they don't make a lot of money, right?
Okay.
And
that's more decent than other parents, actually.
But one of the reasons why I'll mention that is because I'm from Ghana. So in Ghana, they don't like what I would say a fashion designer, they see as a seamstress, right? So that's like a vocation thing.
Right. Okay.
So to them, or like to my dad at that time, that did not seem like a lucrative
I see.
a lucrative thing to do, right? Because like, oh, what do you mean you want to become a seamstress? Like
Just gonna
there's
sew people clothes all day.
exactly, right. So I think there's this idea, there's this like ideal, like this thinking that is connected to the pride of the family when you're thinking
Mhm.
about what you want to do. We've not necessarily like, you know, opened up our, like, especially within our community, within the Black community, we've not really like sat down to have honest conversations around the sectors that are actually the things that we use every single day, right?
Right.
Like no one will say to their kid, become a plumber, but in some cases plumbers in Canada make a lot of money.
It's
If you're
true.
thinking about like, you know, the money aspects, like you get what I'm saying. So I think it comes with education. I think it comes with education of like the sectors, education of like career choices, and
Mhm.
what that means not only for you, but then what that means for your community. Because there was a period of time where everywhere you go, everyone wanted to be a nurse. And that was because there was a demand for nurses, right? There's still, like, not to say that there isn't a demand for nurses now, there is a demand
Mhm.
now, but there was a period in time when our parents came to this country where all they were looking for was nurses. So when you
Right.
start having a conversation with you know, a Ghanaian parent and they're like, "Oh, mom, it's time for me to go to school," what do you think they will tell you to go do? Nursing.
Nursing.
Because
Mhm.
to them, that was what was in demand. So I think it also comes to like really and truly educating our parents and letting them know that, hey, there are other alternatives and there are other options out there, not
Right.
just nursing. Like, you know, I can be an entrepreneur, but you also have to understand that like entrepreneurship is something that, like, you know, a lot of parents see as a side hustle and not necessarily as a
Okay.
career path,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think if you have a parent, or, you know, you are a parent and you're really contemplating the options for your kid, like look around you, like, you know, have honest conversations and be like, what do I indulge in every single day,
Mhm.
right? And what is that thing that, like, regardless of whatever happens, I'm still going to indulge in it? And I think if we take it as like, okay, this is an issue that is around me, it's easier for them to like find things that they can they things that can become career paths, because
Right.
then you're doing things that you actually absolutely enjoy, things that you personally consume, so you might also understand that industry. um,
Right.
but yeah, I think it's really a conversation, and it's like it's a learning, it's a teaching and learning moment, definitely.
I love the teaching and learning part of that because, you know, just sometimes our parents like, you know, just you listen, I'll speak.
Yeah.
um, but it really is, if you're having open and honest conversation about children and what they're genuinely interested in and what the options are, then you do have to be willing to kind of listen and learn as well.
Absolutely.
You talked about nursing, and it is still one of those things that, you know, a lot of girls and women sort of flock to or see as a career option, as opposed to things like STEM or STEAM rather, because there's certain sectors have been very feminized. So, you know, nursing, social work, childcare, like
Yeah.
we're running to those in droves. And in some way, like it's easier to be in those places because almost because you're expected to be
Hmm.
in those places as a woman. Okay, you want to be a social worker, nobody's blinking an eye. If
Absolutely.
it's a guy who says that, you know, you might get a few wings, especially if he says he wants to be a nurse. But it's easier as for women, for Black girls to be in those spaces.
Hmm.
Maybe share for us some of your experiences of being in a male dominated sector, male dominated field, and share with us what is, or maybe you or people you know, other women in tech spaces or even in STEAM spaces, and what are some things that have been done in order to overcome the maybe just feeling like you don't belong, so the imposter syndrome of being in those spaces.
Mm. Yeah, so that's quite interesting, because I share this most of the time, saying that like I got into the tech space by accident. It wasn't
Mm,
something that like I planned. Like I honestly
right.
did not sit down like, okay, I'm gonna go into tech space. No, it was just that I started with a problem, and the problem required some level of technology. and like, the solution required some level of technology. So that was like my introduction to the tech space. Prior to that, I was in the social sector, like you mentioned, and I'm still in the social service sector. So there's kind of like a very big disparity around the number of women that you see in tech spaces, and the number of women that you see that like are leaders within the tech spaces, or are like decision makers within the tech spaces. So when you look at like kind of like the way that the, I guess, chain of hierarchy or whatever it is has been set up,
Right.
the decision makers are not necessarily women, and of course the decision makers are not women of color either. So you'd have kind of like a double issue where, okay, well, where do I fall? Like, what, like in between the cracks, where would I go to? Because first off, I would identify as a young person, I would identify as a woman, I would identify as a Black woman. And then, so you have like three different things that you're navigating, and each one comes with its own challenges, right? You hear people talk about Black women not getting funding, or like people of color not getting funding. And then you hear people talking about Black women not getting funding. And then you hear people talking about women not getting funding.
Right.
So there's a big disparity between how you are to navigate the space when you get into it, because each level comes with its own challenges.
Right.
It was definitely like a learning curve for me, because like I said, I got into the tech space by accident. It was not planned at all. But once I was in there, it was important to really start thinking about ways that I can kind of like not only change the narrative for myself, but also how can I change the narrative for the other people that are going to get into it. And as a result of that, like, it has actually also, like, in more ways than one, impacted the level of programming, or like the programming that we do at Power to Girls, like, the things that we add to our programs, because I was able to understand, wow, like, women are not, like, it's hard to find women developers, it's hard to find women this, it's hard to find women that. So if that's the case, then you recognize that the pipeline issue is not necessarily at like that level. If you're starting and you're engaging people at a younger age, then 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you would see more women in tech, and you see more women in tech, because guess what? They've been able to get that training from a very early stage, and they've been introduced to it at a very early stage. So that's what it is that, like, I think one of the biggest lessons that I've been taking away from the tech space is that it is ripe for disruption.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Like Shireen would say, that's untweetable. Like, the tech space is ripe for disruption.
Because now you see how, like, we're seeing like the racial injustice, or we're seeing the discrimination around in the tech, in and within the tech space, but then we're also seeing the opportunities, right? So I think it's really important that we start engaging. Like, I always bring it back to young people, because in all honesty, my generation is a lost cause. Like, we're like, our period is kind of like semi over, right? It's the next generation that is going to really and truly like catapult all the things that we are doing now. Because if you're not,
the next level,
they're going to take it to the absolute next level. So if you're not engaging kids at an early age in technology, and like, let me also mention ethical technology, then it's like, there's so many different things that can go wrong. So that's been like one of the stuff. I've been able to connect with, like, other Black women that are in that space. And, we have these conversations all the time around the disparity, around like, the discrimination, challenges, all of these different things that, in all honesty, personally, I always say that, like, I'm tired of talking about, because it's something that we've been talking, like, that had already been spoken about, and like, people were fighting before I got into the space.
It's true.
So for me to keep having that same conversation means that the people that were before did not necessarily do anything about it. And this is like, in no fault of their own, but like, personally, I'm just like, yo, I'm tired of talking about this. Like, I'm tired of having this conversation. I'm tired of telling you people that, like, Black women don't get funded. and all of a sudden there's like 700 funds out there for Black people or for Black women. But then what ends up happening, and a lot of times people don't talk about, is that because there is such a disparity in the amount of money or the amount of resources that is going to a particular community, when you release these resources, again, you would have a lot of people apply for it, and then maybe like 10 people will get it, or 100 people will get it. Right. So there is definitely still like a big disparity as kind of like, in as it has been for us to be in the tech space. It's definitely ripe for disruption. So yeah, that's kind of like where I would like to leave that.
I feel like that is such a good quote for just where we're at in the world right now. I feel like COVID-19 set it up. The whole
Yeah.
anti-Black racism movement, like, just added a layer on top of it. The status quo needs to be disrupted. Like, this whole thing is a disruption, and I think that's so key that you started out, like you say, in the tech field by accident. You saw a problem. Your goal was to solve the problem. It just happened to be that solving the problem required you to dabble in tech, and you didn't back down because your commitment was, this problem needs to be solved. And I think that's so powerful, like starting where the problem is. What is not working for you? What is not, and see where that takes you, because it could have taken you anywhere. Your thing was just like, whether you take me to tech or wherever you take me, I'm going to follow this path because my goal, my aim, my determination is to follow the problem, is to solve the problem. And I feel like with this whole idea of the tech field, the tech space, and just our world being ripe for disruption, many of us have been having conversations about the problems in our lives and in our society for so long. And to like channel that spirit, because I really do love that. If we had to channel that, okay, so I've been talking about this. I'm not the first person to talk about it. The generations before me, my mother's mother was talking about this. What am I going to do with this opportunity that I have? Because I can see it. Not everybody sees it from my perspective, but I can see it. How am I going to challenge it? And what am I going to do about it? I absolutely love that. That's so powerful.
Thank you.
That's powerful. So maybe let's talk a little bit about then, what does, like, we're talking about disruption. We're talking about the just the state of the world right now, the pandemic, the movement. What does empowerment for women look like specifically in this season? Like, what does it mean for women's empowerment in this season? How, like, where, just like, how do we navigate this season? What are some opportunities maybe?
Wow, that's actually a really, really good question. And I say that it's a really good question in twofold. So one is that when you look at like different movements across the world, it is being mobilized and it's being run by women. And in the same vein, you also see how, like, you also see like, it's not necessarily like, that women were not necessarily recognized before, but like in this current climate more than ever, you see the value and do the things that women bring to the table. And I would specify that Black women bring to the table.
Right.
So that's a really good question, because, when this is over, and like, I think today, I was reading something, and, my cousin was saying to me, and like, she, like in the thing that she had posted, it was saying that like, this is not like a moment, this is not something that is happening and then it's like tomorrow we wake up and that's it. No, like, this is more than that. It's even more than a movement, right? This is a disruption. Like this, like what we're seeing in the world right now, it's a disruption. It's a disruption of institutions that have been in place for a very long time. It's a disruption of technology. It's a disruption of companies, a whole lot of things, like systematic things that has been systematically put in place to divide, to oppress, and to suppress. So when you look at all of that, and then we ask the question, now, what does that look like for women after this? Or like, what does that look like for women within this period? We recognize that like women have already been doing this thing. Women have already been disrupting. Women have already been, challenging the status quo, because for women, like, this is like a daily fight, right? And not to say that it's not a daily fight for men as well, but it's the women that always kind of like get up and say, yo, enough is enough, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing, and like, again, this is just like my personal opinion, so please no one come after me after.
Don't at her. Just like
um, but one of the things that I see is that we're definitely going to see a shift in the way that people treat women in different sectors and in different sectors, period. You know, when you look at essential workers, women have been at the forefront of that as well. You see, like, you know, service providing, like everything, like literally across the spectrum, you see women spearheading it. So now what we have to see after this is not women only spearheading, but women in leadership positions.
absolutely.
Where, like, you know, they're not just the diversity and inclusion officer, but they're actually, like, you know, the CFOs, they're the CEOs. We want to see
I love it.
color in these positions. We want to make sure that they are representative of like the new world that we are, like the world that we've disrupted and the new world that we are creating. And what that does, and I think a lot of times we don't think about what that does for the next generation. What that is going to do now for the next generation is that they're going to see themselves represented. When they see a Bozoma, they're going to be like, wow, she worked at Apple, she worked at Nike, she worked at Endeavor, she worked at Uber, she worked at all these different places, and this is what she brings to the table. That lets me know that I can also get there. When you see a Justina, when, like, so all these different things, and I think that's where we're at right now, where we're going to see literally women in positions of power. And when I talk about power, I'm not talking about like the power that, you know, gets to your head and then, you know, you start to shut people out, or you get to that top and then you, like, you know, you kind of like close the door for everyone else. I'm talking about the inclusive power. I'm talking about the power that, like, you know, looks behind and says, hey, there are 5 more people behind me that I need to make sure that they're able to fill in these shoes. So I'm providing mentorship. So I'm providing resources. So I'm providing connections. And I think that's essentially what we're going to be seeing is like a global network of women that are going to be like disrupting institutions even more. So for me, that's kind of like where I see like the whole kind of like empowerment aspects going. One thing that I do want to mention though is that when we think about empowerment, you know, the space, the word in itself has become so overused, like a cliche, like, you know, it's been so overused and it's like, oh my God, yes, okay, another empowerment, you know.
Another women's empowerment group or talk.
But I think one of the things that is missing and, you know, in some regards has been missing in the whole empowerment movement is around authenticity. And I say that to say that let's not kid ourselves that as much as there are women that are fighting for equality, for equity, and for opportunities to be in different spaces, there are also women that are fighting to keep those spaces closed. So what is more important is the coming together, like, and this is, and again, like, this is specifically for Black women, right? Like, we have to come together and recognize that, like, yo, our time is now, and that unity is what's going to keep us. Like, yo, one person can go so far, but when there's 2 of you, you're able to carry the load a bit easier. So I think it's really, really important that we really maintain that level of authenticity while maintaining that unity. Because in all honesty, until we are all on one accord and we have the same understanding and we are literally keeping each other in mind and like have like kind of like a common goal, it would be hard to create any disruption. So I think that's kind of like some of the stuff that I'll touch on specifically around how the empowerment aspect is going.
Right. No, I definitely I like that. I just remember I was reading a quote, well, not a coworker, but she works in the sector as well, and her post was angry women will change the world. And you know, for such a long time it's been the negative stereotype of the, you know, the angry Black woman. But sometimes when you're tired talking and you're about to make change, like, and especially when you have reason to be angry, like, why are we having these same conversations decades later? It's like, clearly something needs to shift. Maybe we've been asking too nicely. And that's another one of your quotes that I saw that I want to like That's amazing. I think you said like it's our time and we demand more. That was in Bay Street Bull, and they quoted you as saying, "It's our time, we demand more." And I was like, "Yes." That's where we're at. We're tired of, always having to be polite and asking please and thank you, because that's the way we've been socialized. I feel like there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting angry to the point that you actually get up and make change, and you don't stop until the change is made. And I think for a lot of us, as Black women in the Black communities, because to be fair, like we're not a homogenous people. You know what I mean? Like there is intersectionality even within Black womanhood, or even within Black communities. But I think understanding that as much as there is intersectionality, there are some places of commonality. And if we would focus on those places of commonality, like we have been, like you said, we've been disrupting and bringing amazing change to the world as we know it, but we can continue that so our children and our children's children can see a very, very different world, that they can reimagine what the state of the Black woman is, not just in North America, but globally. Because as much as, in places, I'm from the Caribbean, you're from Ghana, as much as it may not be a race thing, there's still patriarchy. There's still, the glass ceiling. It may not be a Black woman thing. It's just a woman thing, but it exists. So the more we are able to get angry enough to bring about change, the more we shift the narrative, we shift what is possible for the generations behind us. So I agree. Like it's our time. We demand more. I love that.
Definitely.
I love that. Okay, so right now, like I mentioned before, we are on the verge of launching our CEE Tech program. CEE caters to Black youth between the ages of 18 to 29. We've run this program a number of times before. We've always had in those spaces more males than female. Our male to female ratio has never been, what we'd like it to be. So I'm wondering, what would you say to a young Black woman now between the ages of 18 to 29 who now may be feeling like maybe I've always had an interest in digital technology. You mentioned some of the varying streams that is even within that bigger umbrella. Maybe it's UX design, UI design, coding, whatever that looks like. But I felt like it wasn't my space. I felt like it wasn't my I felt like I didn't belong. And she's probably thinking about getting into that, or maybe even entrepreneurship, because you're also a boss entrepreneur. So what do you say to a young woman within that age range who's thinking about it, but still having some last minute, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't?
Honestly, just do it. And yeah. She said,
that's actually one of my because that's actually one of my favorite quotes. Like that Nike "just do it" is actually one of my favorite quotes. I love that.
Oh, that was funny. And the reason why I say just do it is because the moment you overthink something, or the moment you give yourselves all the reasons why you should not do it, that is even more reason why you should do it.
Right.
And I know that the tech space, or the digital technology space in itself has not been presented to be very inclusive or representative of young women specifically. But then look at all the different ways that women in itself, or even young women, have used digital technology to create change, right?
Right.
If you look at your YouTubers, they are people that are in the digital tech space, believe it or not, depending on whatever content it is that they're providing. But even so, they're still in that space. So I think it's really using the opportunity to highlight women in that space so that other women can feel connected to them. So there has to be that level of connection. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier around representation, right? Because without representation, if I don't see something, I cannot believe that I can be it. So I see it and then I be it. So it's really important for us to look at how we're even especially as service providers. Then this is something that for us, of course, we work with young girls, so it's a bit easy because we are specific. We're like, okay, we're working with
Right.
women. But I think especially in like the service sector, it's around like looking at the way that we even communicate when we're outreaching, the way that we
Mm-hmm.
images that we put on our flyers when we're
Absolutely.
what is the language like, right? So are
Mm-hmm.
we using language that is inclusive, or like even language that
Mm-hmm.
if your goal is to attract more women or more girls, are you using language that women feel like they can actually subscribe to, right?
Right.
I think that's super important. And like, I'll give you an example. There's um one of like the quote unquote diverse companies here in Toronto, and they were talking about when the question was asked around like how do they achieve that level of like kind of gender parity in a way, where
Mm-hmm.
they were, like one of their leaders said that when they started recruiting, they were using words like kick ass, like we're looking for like a kick ass this and a kick ass that, and then
Right.
they realized that even just that word alone, when they were using it, it wasn't attracting a lot of
Right.
women, right? So instead of that, they changed it to something else. We're looking for an amazing human that does this, so we're looking for this person that does that.
Mm,
And as a
that's
result of
good.
that, realized that like more people that were coming in. So I think
That's
it's something
good.
that we don't think about in the social service sector, about how
Mm-hmm.
we are recruiting or like how we're putting our messaging out there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like once we change that narrative, it's easier for us to be able to like attract more people.
Right.
And yeah, but like to the young girls, I'll just say like, take a leap of faith, like, literally like take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Try it. Like if you get into it and you realize that it's not for you, that's cool. But one
Mm-hmm.
thing is that it's better for you to try and be like, okay, that was not for me. And that way
Mm-hmm.
you have the experience to say, I tried it and that wasn't for me, as opposed to, okay, I don't think, this is a
Yeah.
real thing, or this is like something that women do. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful. At least give it a try and just do it, because a lot of us, and things like imposter syndrome is found especially in Black women is one of the highest places that it's found, and it's that sense of feeling like we don't belong.
Yeah.
And with the whole disruption that's happening in the world, I think part of it is that disrupting our own thought pattern,
Mhm.
disrupting the way we think
Yeah,
about ourselves,
absolutely.
disrupting the way we see ourselves. Like there are all these norms, there are all these practices that we adhere to because that's all we can imagine it to be. But if one pandemic could shut down the entire world in a way that nobody expected, or if the death of Black men in the States could like have a global impact where people all over the globe are protesting, then there's nothing that is static, or there's nothing that is fixed. Anything can be demolished and rebuilt. And I
Absolutely.
think I think our minds have to be a part of that. Like if we're going to keep up with the change and with the new world, or with the different world that we are
Crazy.
building, creating, then we do need to disrupt our thought patterns too. Like you
Absolutely.
belong in this space. Like
Absolutely.
we need to learn, and we need to be more comfortable with taking up space. And I say we because that includes myself as well. Like we need to be more comfortable with taking up space and owning it. Just
Yeah.
like why if somebody else can be there, like why not me? If
Hmm.
if if a white counterpart or a male can be there, then why can I not be there? I deserve to be there as much as everybody else. So I am really looking forward to the Black women who will be coming into the CEE Tech program. Like I can't wait to meet you. If you're thinking about this, if you know somebody who is interested in tech and would benefit from this, please send them over. There are amazing women at CEE that are true inspirations to me every day. Our executive director, our director of operations, like the staff, amazing women, and just really boss, really boss women that are motivational and inspiring. So please do come on over. The application, I should say, is on our website, so at ctoronto.org. And it's also in our link tree on Instagram. So find it there and apply. I'm going to ask you as we're coming down on time, because I want folks to know where they can access you, and I want folks to know where the little girls in their lives can benefit from the amazing things that you're doing, and then how they can support the work that you're doing as well. Because listen, it takes support. But before you tell it, or maybe tell us that first, and then I want you to end up with telling us what your favorite quote is. So
Okay.
tell us, where can people find you? How can people support the work that you're doing?
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So you can find me on all social media platforms. So I'm on Instagram at Aisha Afua. So it's AISHAAFUA. Twitter, the same thing. I'm on LinkedIn as Aisha Addo. So it's AISHA, last name Addo, ADDO. And then my personal website is aishaaddo.com. For folks that have young sisters, we actually have a virtual summer program coming up, Power to Girls. It's
Nice.
actually one of the things that like I'm super, super excited about because my
Yeah.
team did an amazing job in terms of like putting that together. So we are currently taking applications, and it's for girls from 12 to 15.
Mm,
And
I
it's
love that.
yeah, like it's super, super exciting because we're going to be teaching the young girls art, leadership, mentorship, and entrepreneurship. So everything is
I know
going
some young girls I need to get in that program.
free, and it's free of charge. There's no cost to it.
Amazing.
So make sure that you register, and you can register at so app.power2girls, POWERTOGIRLS.com. So com. So that's where you can find us. And then you can also just follow us on Instagram, which is Power to Girls CA. So it's Power to Girls CA on Instagram.
Mm.
The same thing on Twitter as well. And then, oh my God, I have so many things. Okay.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. Please tell us.
And then with Drive Her, you can follow us at Drive Her app on Instagram and on Twitter, and driveher.ca on the website. And then I have a podcast that talks to entrepreneurs and like here's stories of like entrepreneurs of color,
Mm,
and their experiences
amazing.
as well, called Unfiltered. So you can definitely check that out on anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Yeah, and there's just so much more. But yeah,
I love it. I'm
if you go online,
so
find it.
just
Thank you.
sorry I missed that part.
No, I'm saying that like if you go on my Instagram page, you'll find it all. So.
Yeah, I've been I was gonna say I've been like stalking you like this week. I'm like, okay, I'm adding all these ones. I haven't checked out the podcast yet, but I will be. I'm just so just so grateful
Thank you.
for your commitment to the work. I'm so grateful for your passion. I'm so grateful for your inspiration. I know there are a lot of young girls and older women that you've already inspired. I am absolutely sure of it. And that you will continue to inspire, because you know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to come. Like, I can see it now. There's so much more to come. When they said you were part of the 100 Black women in Canada to look out for, they were not kidding.
Oh,
And
wow.
like, as the number becomes more streamlined, you're also going to be in that. So thank you so much for being such an inspiration. And I just pray that your way continues to be blessed and doors open up for you, and what you do just continue. Like, we continue to see the fruits for generations and generations to come.
Wow,
So
you
thank
just
you for
blessed
that.
me, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Like,
Not a problem. It's true. Like, I don't gas people, is the honest truth. So maybe before we go, if you can share with us your favorite quote and why, that would be awesome.
wow, that is going to be so hard
Is
because
it?
so many. But the first thing that actually came to mind when you said that's what you were going to ask me was this quote. So I think maybe it means that someone needs to hear it. But it's a quote from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and it says
Mhm.
that when you want something enough, like the whole universe conspires with you for you to
Mm,
get it. So I feel like that is kind of like that's a reminder to the folks that are listening, and probably a
yeah,
reminder to you and to myself.
yeah.
Like when we want something and it's part of our journey, and like I'm paraphrasing, so
No, but that's so powerful.
the entire universe literally conspires with you for you to get it. So that just means that whatever it is that you want to do, or whatever it is that you want, just go for it.
Yeah. Go for it. It's possible. It's all possible. Like there's so many things and people aligning with what you
Yep.
desire. I love
Absolutely.
that. Anything is
Yep.
possible.
Thank
That was
you.
good. Thank you
That's
so much for your
amazing.
time. I really appreciated having this conversation with you. When I was reading through all your stuff on your bio, I'm like, she's just somebody I would just sit down and talk to because some of the things that you do, the things you do are so just so inspirational, so powerful, and just so aligned with why I started the work to begin with. So
Mm.
I was really looking forward to speaking with you. It's been a long day, but I think this conversation just kind of like added a whole different level of life and vitality. So thank you for talking with us
Thank you
this
so much,
week.
and I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Have yourself an amazing weekend and continue to stay safe until this pandemic and everything passes over.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Bye.
Bye.